You don't care?
Der er
I'll do it in
måske ikke
English.
forstået.
Okay, I have two questions. The first one is, how and where did GoMore advertise in the beginning?
Yes, that was the first question.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You want to ask the second? Also.
Well, the second one is, how did GoMore convince users to use GoMore in the beginning to generate trust?
Yeah. So in the beginning, we didn't really convince them. But what we did right was PR, and I think that if you cannot through PR, that will also involve social media somehow today, but that did not exist 10 years ago. If you cannot somehow through these channels create the first awareness, then it's going to be very, very expensive to build a business, and maybe just so expensive that it will never be profitable. Sorry, in a long term. The thing here is that it's very small transactions, at least when it's ride sharing we talk about, and you need lots of volume before you really see the concept working. So either you can, well, now we are in France, for instance. There are 10 million people already using sharing concepts like this in France. So there we're much more going in. We don't have huge budgets, but we're going in and doing marketing. It's still online and social, like, so it's Google or Facebook primarily we're doing. So still most of it in the social kind of space of advertising. But and Mikkel can also tell more about what we're doing these days later. But just when we look back, it was PR. I don't think we were that good at it, but we were good enough to get the first users on board. And I was, the reason why I say PR, but take also social media into consideration, or consider that part of PR today, is that, for instance, I was asked the other day, some person wanted to, or a person wanted to have some advice on creating that there was some concept for people tutoring each other on math, like so if you want to have help with your math in high school or wherever you are, you can find someone helping you there, and they have spent lots of money apparently on Google, like Google AdWords. So people they search for something and you're on paid advertising on Google, you come up high and people click on it and they go to your website and then you pay Google for that traffic. Such a kind of marketing just only makes sense if people know that the concept that you're delivering actually exists. So ride sharing, for instance, that was also my advice to this person, but you have to go out, maybe go local in the beginning. If you have to create success locally out in the societies, then rather go out and talk to the local media, like Ringkøbing Avis or Aalborg, what do they call it, Nordjyske Stiftstidende, something like that, where it's much easier to get attention for the first time, as a first thing, because they're more willing to take things in than the very big, like national media. And also because you simply need to start telling the story of what it is you do and why it's meaningful. You cannot buy your customers when they don't know what it is you're selling. So say for ride sharing, it has to be somehow creative and PR oriented what you're doing, unless you're competing in a very established market where everybody knows what ride sharing is. Rental is different. We're still selling the social stories, and they're very important to what we stand for. But at the end of the day, we are also just renting out cars as Avis and Hertz and Sixt and other companies are doing it, in the sense that you can go to a website and you can book a rental car. Then it's cheaper on GoMore and it's nearby because it's people living in the street renting out cars. So that's really nice. But at the end of the day, again, it's also a rental company, and there are many people searching for rental cars on Google. So that makes sense to simply buy your customers from Google to some extent, but still it's a social concept, and if you don't get kind of the social network effect out of it, you will have to keep buying your customers again and again, and it's going to be very expensive.
I actually have a sub question if that's okay. Do you remember how much your marketing budget was in the beginning?
We did not have any.
You did not have
No,
okay.
Yeah. We paid, Søren and I think, honestly, 10,000 crowns to these other students to make the first website. You saw the result. and that was it. And then it was PR. But it was also not successful, right? So I'm actually not saying that I have the recipe for success from day one. the thing is that you have to you just have to keep pushing. You know, you have to do both paid and PR and social and events and everything. You will not know in the beginning what's working. If you have huge like TV campaign budgets, of course that might work, but it would be so expensive that it might never make sense, right? So one thing is that we did PR successfully, I would say in the beginning, but didn't have success really as a company, so I cannot say it's a success story in social, right? But nowadays when we go into a market, we just play on all dimensions. So it's both PR and it's social, it's paid, it's partnerships. We have sometimes gained from partnerships also with festivals and things like that. Brands that people like to identify with and that have lots of traffic or can bring traffic to us. So you simply need to keep testing. But what we have become much better at, I should also mention, is PR. We have in Denmark a really capable guy called Rasmus now doing PR for us, and he's doing many things, but he's also doing that. And he's just good at placing the stories in the newspapers, like really understanding, there's probably a journalist at Jyske Vestkysten who would like this story. There's one in Aarhus that would like this story, one in Berlingske liking this story. So if you build a relationship and deliver meaningful content to journalists, they will also quite often be willing to write about you.
Yeah. Next one. Oh, which one was first? This one. Okay. Could you state your name and if you're a student, what you're studying?
Sure. My name is Camilla. I'm studying at Copenhagen Business School. It's a master's in communication.
Yeah. Thank you.
We are writing a thesis about the sharing economy. My first question is, who is your main target group? You established that it's not existing car owners. I have myself as a student not used GoMore, so who is your target group?
Yeah, that would be you, but so we didn't really succeed there, I understand. Okay, but it is fairly young, well-educated people in the bigger cities. People between 20 and 40, living in bigger cities, being in need of transportation, which will often mean that they are fairly educated, either in the sense that they are studying somewhere else than where they grew up. They're going to travel back visiting their family, or they have a job that also requires them to either rent a car or use ride sharing for transportation. We have the clear ambition of being mainstream. We want to be for everybody, but we start out like the core or the most typical user in the beginning will be these fairly young, also early or easy, or what's the word for it? There's not like extremely early like tech adapters, adopters, sorry, but people who of course have smartphones, know how to use online concepts, are kind of modern in their behavior, and then I would say young, educated, living in the bigger cities.
Thank you. My next question is, you stated that your business model is this peer-to-peer solution, and that is a broader concept than just ride sharing. Could you imagine expanding your business model into other areas that's peer-to-peer based?
Yes, I could. As I said, we have to be careful not to confuse our users. But one thing that has become clear to me is that, also talking about brains, is that people really understand GoMore as a social place, a place where people are helping each other. And if we can keep that dimension, then I would not be so worried of branching out, as long as we stay true to that brand. But it still has, of course, to be meaningful within the realm of what we're doing.
Alright, thanks.
Okay. Let's go.
My name is Hafsa, and I'm from Aalborg University, and I study business and economics. And I would like to know what is GoMore's biggest challenges and opportunities in Denmark and in your other markets?
Yes. Big question. I can try to answer, but could you specify your context for asking just a little more?
Well, we can say like in Denmark then, your biggest challenges.
Yeah.
Altså største udfordring her i Danmark.
Yes. Let me think. Well, it's of course something we're thinking about all the time. I mean, what is it really that is holding us back? If anything, I would say that right now it's still a matter of educating people, even though it's not as hard as it was 10 years ago, because now people are also educating other people. You know, it's a snowball effect. The more people that talk about GoMore, the more people will know about it. But I wonder, I mean, there's two questions, like why don't more people use GoMore already, but also like how big can it really become? Because even if we only have 400,000 out of 6 million people in Denmark, and that's around 7%, there's also a limit to how big these concepts that we are doing right now, they can become. I mean, when do we hit the ceiling, kind of? That I don't know, but I still have a general feeling that we could become 10 times bigger, not in terms of members, but in terms of business in Denmark. So I would say, yeah, but it's a general like growth problem. Like how do you do clever marketing or make people talk so well about you that other people will join you? It's really, yeah, growth in general, but then more specifically, as I said, revenue. We have to become better at making money on what we're doing. You cannot forever just have lots of traffic but not make money. So we're thinking of how can we, for instance, in the car rental area, introduce more kinds of services that are making both, or giving the users a better service, but also making it a better business for us to do what we're actually doing.
Okay, thank you. Next one. Yeah. Hey.
Hi, I'm Anders from CBS, writing my master thesis. I'll just ask you if you told your passengers back then driving from Aarhus to Copenhagen whether you was the owner or not. Was it a surprise for them, or did you told sometime?
Yeah, I always tell it if they ask what I do. Sometimes, I think 2 times or something. I've really done many trips with GoMore. 2 times it was just like so quiet in the car that it did not make any sense for me to start telling people about anything. But other than that, like 95 or whatever % of the times, it's just, yeah, I just tell it, because otherwise I will have to honestly invent stories for 3 hours about what I'm doing rather than just telling the truth. And then people think it's funny, and they have, of course, many comments and ideas to either comments to why they like it or ideas to how it could be better. But in general, it's just yeah, it's very nice, and I actually have it's nice conversations. But I actually also have the impression that people also often in other GoMore cars talk about the concept, because it's just a natural like starting point. This is smart and nice, and how often have you traveled this way, etc., etc. Then we have this conversation for a little while, and then often it just, you know, we continue talking about any other thing.
Hi, my name is Nati, and I'm studying IT in the university. I would like to know a little bit about the launching of the app. How did it change in the company, and when did you decide to create the app?
Yeah. So how it changed the company? Yeah. So we launched. We launched the first, but not very great. I mean, we did it fast, and it was not so great. But the first iOS app 2.5 years ago, roughly. But the apps that we have today, we invested much more in, and they are fairly new, both for ride sharing. So we have iOS and Android apps, and we have for both ride sharing and rental. Now we're still building on the apps. I think they can become better in many ways, but anyhow, they are quite comprehensive apps already, and they were launched in I think in the autumn, weren't they? Like early autumn. The ride sharing, they're fairly new, these apps. In the autumn last year, both for ride sharing and for rental. We did have, though, a very good mobile website. We still have that, so you could use it on your mobile without the app. And also we did have an app. Before, but it's but it changed a lot the perspective. Also we have on things, getting these real good apps out there, because we are becoming much more an app company than we were before. We always thought in terms of web concepts when we're developing GoMore, but actually it's becoming more and more natural for us to be app first, as you say. It's simply, and it's something that we have to force ourselves to a little bit. You know, we come from a web background, but we have to stop thinking in web terms and just, you know, having the app as our primary reference point when we think about what is GoMore. Because suddenly we're having users out there that have never seen our websites, right? Before it was always about explaining things on the website, nice pictures, whatever. You can do many things on a website that you can on an app. But for many, GoMore is just an app. And I think today, only like 8 months or something after we had the 6 to 8 months after we had these new apps launched, is like, what is it, like 2/3 of our traffic is on mobile devices. Is that roughly so? And I think more than 1/3 is on the actual apps, right? Am I correct?
Even more.
Even more. I'm even more correct.
Even more than 1/3 of our traffic is on the apps.
Okay, yes. So that's just absolutely central now. So in many ways we are an app company now. Before we were a web company.
I can actually build on that.
Yes, yeah, I would love to.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Mikkel. I'm the head of marketing at GoMore. I just wanted to build on that from a marketing perspective. So retention is really important for GoMore. I mean, for several reasons, we want people to keep using our service. But from a marketing perspective, it's also about, I mean, purchasing a new user or acquiring a new user is quite expensive usually. So that's why we want the users that we've sort of acquired or paid for, we want them to come back. And what we can see is that app users tend to actually be much more loyal, at least in our case, than website-only users. And of course that might be just because if you love the concept, then you get the app as well. I mean, there's that. But I definitely also think that once you have the app and it's on your phone, it's on your home screen, you tend to remember that GoMore exists and that it's something that you can use. So the apps are also very good for retention.
Yeah. Should we do one more question and then a break?
Yeah.
We will get all the questions. Just one question.
Hi, I'm Nina. I'm studying at the Danish Media and Journalism School. And the question asked over here, I was thinking about your major challenges. Is that maybe that you have a different target group than you could have? Could you expand the target group or make a different one extra? I mean, you said something about 20 to 40 years old, knowing how to work a mobile device, and I'm thinking about my dad, who should probably be in your target group because he has a little bit more money, and he rocks his iPhone, he knows how to work it, and I think that more and more people actually do that. So have you thought about expanding the target group?
Yes, and we are. It's also happening. So when I say 20 to 40, what it's not supposed to mean is that we only want those. We just have the history of having the easiest time getting those started using the concept. But clearly, we want to be for everybody, as I said. And what we're seeing, also my own parents, they retired a year ago. They live off in North Jutland, but they have children and grandchildren in Copenhagen. Now they drive a lot from North Jutland to Copenhagen, and they have time, they have an empty back seat, and they want to save some money. So they're just the perfect drivers. On GoMore, they take passengers from Aalborg to Copenhagen all the time, right? So it's like there's a generation. There's just an example. Also, you mentioned your dad, and there's a generation there that's maybe even better or potentially better users than the ones we have already. We just haven't been able to reach them so much yet. So we have done several things in terms of communication towards older people, like doing some campaigns about you should get your parents started on GoMore. But we could do so much more there. And I totally agree that it's something we should focus on for the future, simply because you can only grow so much within a specific segment. You have to broaden out to more segments. So we are aware of it, but it's not like we're totally there yet at all, but it's happening.
Okay, we're gonna have a 10-minute break.
Thank you. My name is Dominic, and I study at CBS Service Management. So you you said before that you wanted to become like the portal for transportation here in Denmark, and I see that GoMore is beautiful, working and super convenient for the trips, for long trips, for instance Copenhagen, Aarhus. But what about the short trips? Do you think you will compete one day with Uber or cab companies?
We might, but it's not in a very near future. So also when I said I compared to DSB, for instance, like the trains or the buses, that's where you might look, or rental companies if you're going long distance and you need a car for it. So our trips, they are right now on average 230 kilometers, and our rentals are on average 2 days long. So it's intercity, it's longer trips, and that's in itself a big segment that we can grow so much in still. So we should not confuse things too much, and also we would need a very different technology to really support short trips. What we are seeing though is that trips are becoming shorter as we're becoming more app-based, because it's a little more of a real-time experience using an app than having to open your computer and go on the web. But in order to really support, like for instance in-city ride sharing, you would need a completely different concept. Right now what you do is you post a ride, say I'm going from A to B, and there needs to be a significant like mass of passengers searching for that kind of ride in order to make the match. If we were to make real time, and it's something we talk about a lot because we like the idea and we don't see any meaning in cars not being shared in general, right? So we would like to go there, but in order to be in the cities, for instance, you would need, I mean, the ideal would be that all cars, you know, they're just to be shared. You know, you have your app on and people can book you and jump on and off the car. Still, that's also just extremely different from both taxis and Uber, because that's exactly where you order a driver to take you somewhere you want. The question is like, how much can we make the cars just going where they're already going shared? And that's just easier with a little bit of pre-planning and for the longer trips. But it's definitely, like, if you ask, is it a vision? Is it somewhere we would like to go? Absolutely. But we need to build our core business before we're too busy introducing new and very expensive technology. But it's a good vision, and we share it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Theo?
So, hi, my name is Michael, and I guess I'm an entrepreneur within the sharing economy. My question is regarding insurance. You mentioned that roughly 50% of all your revenues on rental cars go to insurance companies. Have you considered different types of insurance, like Lloyd's, crowdfunding it, or other means? Because I'm basically having the same problem that insurance eats. Well, I don't have an insurance right now, but the one I'm discussing with eating up the whole revenue, which makes it impossible to grow.
We are talking about many different solutions, and I think over time, right now what we do have is just that we have one insurance, pretty much the same, covering at least 3 countries. That's Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. Then we work with other insurance companies in Spain and France. But just that, I mean, coming this far, that you actually have such a flexible product that is kind of applicable in several markets at the same time, was, I mean, that's the furthest we've come so far. It's still very traditional insurance products as such. Also, just another example is that there's an excess, like selvrisiko, when you rent a car, just like when you rent cars everywhere else. What would be natural for us maybe at some point was just to insure ourselves against like the real big damages, and then finance the smaller damages ourselves, and in order to bring down the price of the insurance. But I think in order to get there, we need both much more volume and more knowledge and history before we can actually do the math around it. But I have been in contact also with Lloyd's, or Lloyd's-backed brokers, and they are, at the end of the day, I met the same mentality and the same questions as I also met at the more traditional, like consumer-oriented companies. So it's not, I would just say it's a very slow-moving industry to work with, and I have a feeling that's a little bit the same, like no matter how you try to do it. And
And also just imagine if you had to really come up with an innovative insurance product yourself to get started. I mean, maybe that might be the only way to get started, but after a year, we actually had a product from an insurance company to get started with, which felt like, forever, and we were almost dying on the way, and it was terrible. All the meetings, I had meetings with all insurance companies in Denmark, but I could imagine that establishing something more creative yourself would be even harder, and then you run into all kinds of regulation. Like you're not, as a company, you're not allowed to carry risk unless you're an insurance company. So you cannot just say legally that, if something bad happens but it's not too bad, we'll actually just cover it. No, then you take on a risk as a company, and that you're not allowed to. I'm not saying this is clever or good or anything. It's just that it's so complex, and it's run by very old and slow moving companies in general. I would say though that the one we have in Scandinavia, they're called Protector. They're a young Norwegian, very fast growing company. They're not that small after all. They are listed at the stock exchange in Oslo, so fairly established. But they are clearly moving so much faster than any other company we have worked with so far. In Spain, we have one of the world's biggest insurers, Allianz, the German-based Allianz, and you would often think that that's cool. Now we have a good brand, everybody knows it, then it's good. But I would say the bigger the worse in general, really. So go for younger, more flexible companies. But it's slow. It's not the funniest thing I'm doing either.
And have you had many accidents?
Yeah, we have many rentals, right? So I think our numbers, they are close to what just the statistics would normally assume you would have of accidents. I think our history is actually a little better than what you could have feared, exactly because we are a social environment, people are rated, bad users are filtered out. We also do lots of checks on renters. It's not just a socially generated society here. You have to live up to certain standards and document both. You have to send in copies of or it's a webcam solution, so it's very easy. But upload photos of your driver's license, of your health insurance ID, and list various kinds of information about yourself. And also you need to write when you start, what are you going to use the car for? Because our experience is, if you cannot explain that in a meaningful way, then you're probably not going to use it for something good, right? So we are not very nice there. That's the irony of what we're doing. We are trying to be this social and nice environment where people are nice to each other, but that you can only be if you keep the bad customers out. So we're doing many things there, checking ourselves, but also then we have the rating system internally, kind of being self-regulating in the sense that people with bad ratings, they have a harder time being accepted the next time they want to rent a car. So going back to your question, our damage history is fine. The insurance company is making good money on us as a customer, and I want them to make as much money as possible, because the next time we negotiate, it will be easier for us to bring down the price, right?
You're skipping the line.
Hello, I'm Jonas from the IT University of Copenhagen, and I was wondering, with the recent success of everything that involves sharing economy, what do you see as the general competitive advantage of this peer-to-peer business model?
Yeah. As I said during my presentation, we have these highly underutilized resources, being the cars in our case. That's the case for many resources. I think houses and cars are the most obvious cases. Very valuable resources, very underutilized, or very suboptimal utilized. You would say, when you look at houses, they're not necessarily underutilized to the extent as cars are, but they could be used in a much smarter way. And cars are just underutilized; they're not being used, basically. So the competitive advantage basically comes from having something that's extremely costly, that you suddenly are able to connect another consumer with, and this other consumer can actually pay some money for using this resource that is otherwise just idle. And that makes it possible to price it very differently from similar services offered by traditional companies, because they need to buy the fleet. They need to have also another thing is the salary costs of the traditional companies that they need to pay to run, for instance, a rental company. In our case, it's all upside in a way for the owner of the resource, because it's just expensive already. But can you share just a little bit? Then you bring down your cost. So there's just, from a resource perspective, it's very competitive in most cases. It's not always competitive, but in most cases. And then there's also a service dimension to it. It's actually nicer. It can be nicer, especially if we design our app and our products the right way. It can be nicer to deal with a private person than with a company. You get bad service often at companies. You don't get bad service as small individuals. I mean, not small, but small individual businesses, in the sense that you go to a person and he has his little quote-unquote business in terms of renting out his car. He wants to do well because you're going to rate him afterwards, and he's also entering this whole model because he likes it somehow. It's not necessarily the case that the man or woman you deal with Avis have a special love towards car rental. It's just a job, kind of. So socially and service-wise, it's different. And last thing would be the distribution. In our case, we have around 5,000 cars in Denmark, meaning that all street corners, literally speaking, actually, in Copenhagen, almost literally speaking, have a GoMore car standing that you can rent. If you want to rent from a traditional company, you have to go to the airport or go to one of the pickup places to rent the car. Here it's just, you rent a car right where you live by somebody living more or less next to you. So it's much more accessible in our case. So there are both price and convenience and service, I would say, as at least potential upsides, and in most cases real upsides, competitively speaking.
Yeah. Thanks. And you had a question? Yeah. You can pass it on to this guy afterwards.
Hello, my name is Mikkel, and I'm a co-founder of Closet, a sharing economy platform for dresses, handbags, toys, and so on. Yeah, my question is, how do you decide which new markets to expand into?
Yeah, that's also a good question. It's so in a way, why did we even start in Denmark? Yeah, we're from Denmark. We like the idea, right? It's not more complicated than that. But then the question comes, how do you choose the next markets? And the logics are quite different. Only that we are still staying within the same, I would say, European and more so Western European geography, where there are big middle classes, fairly well educated middle classes, big cities, people needing transportation between these big cities, and a big adaptation of modern technology. So I would say we are a European middle class phenomenon in many ways, meaning that it doesn't mean that we would not like to do business outside of Europe, but there's something natural to actually staying within this geography, at least for a start, and make them work. But then we choose, and then the fact is we want to grow. You could also imagine a company. It would not be so fun, but you also say, let's not grow. Let's just keep doing what we're doing, where we're doing it. But we want to grow. That's our mentality. That's our kind of business. Also, we have a very scalable product. It does not make sense only have 100,000 people using it when 100 million people could just as well use it. It doesn't really cost any more to develop it for the 100 million, right? So we need to grow in order to really benefit financially from what we are doing, and also we just like it, right? So how do we choose markets? Honestly, it's a little from case to case and very much dependent on also factors, just various, often random factors, market to market. Sorry. So in Spain, there was just an opportunity. So say we are Europe, okay, we're Western Europe for a start. In Spain, there's just an opportunity to acquire another platform that suddenly started growing, but didn't have as nice technology as we had, and didn't have a business model as we had. So we could come with technology and a business model, but they had traffic that we could get in return. So we actually merged the companies there, but it was GoMore then being the governing party afterwards. So the reason why we chose Spain was totally because there was this acquisition opportunity. Why are we going into France? That's because there's one very big player in ride sharing. They're called BlaBlaCar. It's a French thing, BlaBlaCar, and they charge a lot for their service, and they do that only in France and Spain I mean, there are many markets, but it's only in France and Spain that they charge a lot. So we compete with them in Spain already, and we do that very successfully because we don't only charge partly for our service and the ride-sharing service. And we believe that in France we can tap into this huge existing traffic by offering something better or coming with a better offer altogether to the market. Norway and Sweden, that's actually a different reason. That's more and to be honest, more traditional kind of reasoning, which is that, okay, we are based in Denmark, the Scandinavian markets are not so different from each other, most probably, and we see that there's not competition, or very little competition, so we could actually get these markets kind of for ourselves. And that's an appealing thought, but the problem though, or one of the challenges with that thought is that, or that situation is that then you also need to educate the market yourself. And even if we have bigger budgets now, much cooler products, and the social media and sharing economy, etc., is a growing thing altogether, it's still a slow thing, we must recognize. But we are there, we keep pushing our products there. I think it makes very much sense that we should establish ourselves in these markets, and I think we can do it, but it's a slow process. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is just that you can choose a market because there's not competition, but you actually also choose it because there is competition. But you have to believe that you have something to offer to this market that is better than something that's there already. And that being said, yeah, market to market and looking at the opportunities individually.
Hi, my name is Marcus and I study entrepreneurship at CS. I also founded a peer-to-peer platform for sharing storage space. And my question is about monetizing the users. You said 10% on ride sharing, 5% on leasing, and 30% on car rental. Which part of the marketplace are you monetizing on, and what is the reason for monetizing on that respective part?
We are monetizing on all parts, as you just say. We just make more or less money, right? Both from concept to concept and from country to country. So in Denmark, there's not really any competition in ride sharing. There's a little bit of competition in rental, and the leasing concept we have is quite unique in Denmark. So we are in a position there where we can. Well, actually, we're not charging a lot for our services. We're trying not to become arrogant or not become seen as some kind of company that's just exploiting their users. So we are quite cautious in terms of what we're doing, but we can make money on each concept. In Spain, that's the opposite example. We have a big competitor in ride sharing, the French company I just mentioned, and there we choose not to monetize or only monetize a little on ride sharing, but because we believe that if we build this ecosystem of users using all concepts and migrating between concepts over time, then we can make a strong business. Also, even if we only make very little money on one of the services, and that's being the ride-sharing service, which is then being the big generator of volume. There are so many more people coming in there than to the other services, but we're trying then to cross-sell basically. So depending a little on the competitive landscape.
Just a quick question afterwards. So actually, I'm sorry not to be specific enough. I was interested in listening to if you monetize on the suppliers of the cars, or are you monetizing on the people getting a ride or renting a car?
Yeah, it's okay. You know, I said to our investor, he was like, who's paying? He said, I said, but that's a philosophical question. You don't know who's paying, because of course, it's what happens in a marketplace is that whether you make the one or the other pay, it's going to be reflected in the price and actually being both paying. But that being said, we are in ride sharing charging the driver, and on rental we are charging the owner and the renter. We charge the owner more. We charge the owner 20%, and then on average we add 10% roughly on the renter side. And the reason why we have this more complex structure in rental is that we have to make the math come together so that we get our insurance price or cost covered all the time, no matter how cheap or expensive the car is and how long the rental is. So it's a much more complex pricing model we have there, and we have combined it of different components. Ride sharing, that's simple. I don't know actually, honestly, what's better. What I like is that, yeah, you make some money, we take a cut, it's very easy to understand, but some platforms are doing it the other way around, and also successfully.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Stine, and I study at CBS. This might be a question for Mikkel.
Awesome.
How do you say educate the markets? How do you educate them and develop GoMore into being more of a mainstream concept?
We try not to. So educating the market is a real pain in the butt because it's really expensive. Because talking to somebody who doesn't know anything about what it is that you do, you need probably sort of several interactions. You need to really explain what it is that you do. So I mean, so what we do, sort of just practically in for example in Sweden and Norway, where we are educating the markets, is that we're doing some pretty traditional Facebook marketing, saying, did you know you could do this? I mean, did you know you could get a ride from Stockholm to wherever for whatever cost, or did you know that you could offer a ride and make some money or whatever? And then what usually happens is that people, I mean, if we do that well enough, then people will sign up to the platform, and they usually won't do anything for a while, and then we have ongoing communication with our members, both sort of on Facebook and other social platforms, via email and whatever, and yeah. But it's terrible. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of energy, and it's really expensive. It's much easier to be in markets where people have some sort of idea about what it is that you do, because then you can talk about why you are great or better than the competition or whatever. Does that answer the question?
So you do more marketing in Denmark than Sweden?
We do more marketing in Denmark than in Sweden and Norway. For several reasons. One is that we don't have huge marketing budgets. So that also means that we have to be a little bit careful not to quote unquote waste too much money. So the marketing that we do in Denmark, for example, is usually we can usually track it, and I can usually tell Matthias at the end of the month, we spent this much, and then we got this many users, and they did all these things, and we actually made a certain portion of the money back, or maybe we even had a positive return on investment, and that's all good, and that sort of makes sense, right? Whereas in countries like, for example, Sweden and Norway, it's much harder to measure the ROI, because there's usually a longer sort of period of time from the first time that we meet a new potential member, that might be via a Facebook ad or whatever, to the time where they actually spend some money on our platform and we make some money back, right?
Mikkel, could you maybe? Yeah, it's one more question for you.
Really?
Yeah. So it's only a small fraction, right, at the end of the day, of the sales, that is the traffic that you have in Denmark, that is really generated by paid marketing. So just to remember, and also maybe make that clear to the audience here, when we talk about educating the audience, and you can tell more about what we do, it's actually often the audience educating itself, and we are trying to help that happening, right? And that is the majority of our, like, when you look at the communication, I would say, as we're doing in Denmark, for instance, the majority is more in the organic than in the paid, and maybe just tell a little about what we're trying to do there, or how we're trying to push that.
I can definitely talk more about sort of how we're trying to push that. So we, as Matthias said, word of mouth is definitely sort of our most powerful marketing tool, if you could even call it marketing. So we try to focus as much as possible on the GoMore experience, on the experience of actually using the products, of using the services. We try to encourage people to, for example, do simple things such as please share your experiences, your photos from your trips or whatever. We try to capture as many of those good stories that we know are out there, and then use them in either our paid marketing, in our social media presence, in our PR or whatever. We are also working on a program to actually sort of reward users for signing up their friends, not sort of not against their will, but I mean, we definitely want to get people talking about the products as much as possible, because that is much more more effective than traditional paid marketing.
Yeah. Just go get the mic. Who had a question? You had a question.
Hello.
Here you are.
So I'm Simon from IT University, and really quick question to begin with. Who do you?
Is it familiar?
No, it's well, maybe you can answer it both. Who do you see as your biggest competitor?
It varies a lot from both market to market and from concept to concept. If we just stay in Denmark for a little while, we don't have a lot of competitors, right, direct or not really any in ride sharing, but we still need to make our product, of course, more make it preferable, right, compared to other services that you would also choose for transportation. That would be buses and trains for a start, but also just driving yourself, right? If you're looking at it as a passenger, you can buy a ride rather than or book a ride rather than drive yourself. So there, I would not say it's not such a direct competition. It's more us still establishing a new thing that wasn't there before. When you look at car rental, it's a little more mixed. Basically, my understanding is that the growth we have seen in GoMore in car rental has not so much been taking market shares from existing car rental companies, as we have actually been expanding the segment for car rental. We are trying to develop another usage pattern around having or using cars, and ideally people get used to not owning cars, because they can just borrow, as we would like to also call it, a GoMore car right where they live. But that being said, we are also competing with the traditional car rental companies. Of course, there are also other peer-to-peer. There's a couple of other peer-to-peer platforms for rental in Denmark, but honestly, peer-to-peer is small still. We should care much more about the big market that's there already. So there's something to tap into there. We need a more competitive product than Avis and Hertz, Sixt, etc. have in order to win customers from them. But we are also building something new, and we need to do both. Probably you can grow faster by tapping into a market, winning shares of a market that's already there. But I think our long-term opportunity is really also or is more in creating something new.
Yeah. All right. So more to my original question is from your growth the recent years, how do you see yourself keeping this pace, but also making it more sustainable for the future?
Sustainable in the sense of?
Yeah. You said you had a lot of traffic, but you need to generate revenue as well to
So in some markets, for instance Spain, we're just giving our ride-sharing concept away for free, for instance. Now next week we're introducing online payment. So if you pay, so what it is until now is that people, they just pay cash in the card. But now we also offer an online payment service there that we're going to charge a little bit on if they use that. So we are, I mean, it's not so much many of these things, just using this as an example, it's not so much a matter of inventing something completely new, but just really get the full concepts established in all markets we are in. And then when we look at rental, for instance, I think we can actually do a lot in terms of offering more services. an idea I like a lot. We just and we're supposed to do it already, but we've been so busy developing other things. Is, for instance, that mostly people would go to GoMore to rent a car because it's cheaper, or it's cheap. It's not only cheaper than other rental companies, but it's also so cheap that it competes with other kinds of transportation, right? So you often go there for the price, but some people don't really care about price that much. They care much more about convenience. So we're also going to deliver the car to the door services later, which is, again, we talk about expanding our segments, but this will also probably compete with the more traditional car rental services. We say, okay, we're not only cheaper, we offer a much better service. You can go book a GoMore car, and then it'll be delivered to your door at 8 o'clock Monday morning when you need it, for instance. And there'll be many young people owning cars on the GoMore platform, which are happy to make like 100 extra crowns in 10 minutes on actually driving the car down to the one renting the car. That's just an example of how we can expand on what we're already doing and also appeal to some other customers. That being said, though, I think we could grow so much more in what we're already doing, so we should more focus on marketing and communication and polishing of what we already have, rather than just adding new business lines. But it's a mix of the two.
We are almost at 9. So you had a question. Does anyone else have a question? You and you. And then
The front.
yes, you.
Yeah.
And you.
Okay.
Okay. And then we're gonna close the questions and go to the GoMore offices. Okay.
And I'm Sophie from CBS, and I just want to know, what do you think has changed in the society? Is it since a business concept as yours and Airbnb and etc. is so popular today? Is it just because it's cheaper or it's more convenient, or what do you think has changed? Is it some kind of reaction to something we had earlier, or what do you believe?
Oh, sorry. I actually don't. That might sound a little disappointing, but I have a greater point at the end of what I'm going to say now. I don't think it's so much for political reasons. To be honest, I think there were always many people who thought that the way we consume things was wrong, but they didn't change behavior that much anyhow. So I think it's a little more driven by technological factors, as the social media and the mobile platforms, meaning that, as I said several times before, it's not like these things were not meaningful before, but people either didn't trust them or they didn't have the infrastructure to actually make the transactions possible. So I think, I don't know, I would like to think that there's a more political generation now, but actually I think it's actually a little the other way around, because you are then in fact becoming more political when you're doing such things, because you're learning this is really nice. It's eye-opening. You meet other people. When do you elsewhere meet other people in a modern, like, anonymous kind of big city life? Not so often. But here you actually do it, and you come home most of the time happier than when you left on a GoMore ride. And that is really, to me, magic or just fantastic to see. And I'm also just myself learning, and we are, what is it actually that is special about what we are doing? We thought maybe more in the beginning it's about saving money, and it would not exist if it was not financially meaningful for everybody what we're doing. But the real, like, special part of it is more on the social dimension. And now I see us becoming a little bit of a, and I'm not talking in religious terms here, but still a little bit of a movement, in the sense that we now have 400,000 Danes actually traveling and meeting each other, which they wouldn't have done otherwise. So and that is just, it's special, and it's something you don't find so many other places. Even Airbnb, which is nice, and they also claim that the level of trust has grown in California due to the existence of Airbnb. But might be true, but there the interaction is much weaker actually than on GoMore, where you're actually meeting a person and even traveling with a person. So I think it actually it changes your perspective on other people and society doing it, but that might not have been the reason why you started.
Yeah.
So as a student writing a paper, whether it's a master or a bachelor, I know at my school we need to have a contact person assigned to that paper, and you mentioned a lot of times that you're really busy. So would you give us a contact person if we decided to write about GoMore in like switch for a possible great game?
Yeah, but the question is a little how much time does it involve on our end, because
I wouldn't call you every day, but maybe a few times, or it would actually be Mikkel.
Here's what we're gonna do. No, we cannot promise that, because that's exactly why we're having these events. But if some of you have follow-up questions we cannot promise that we can answer, but you can still, of course, try to write. But generally, we are going to have these kinds of events exactly to answer questions rather than doing it individually. So I'm not going to promise anything, but yeah, that's the best I can do. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for coming, all of you. And we're gonna go to the GoMore offices.